Wake up in the morning, I just gotta get it. Wake up in the morning, I just gotta get it.
All right, welcome everyone to the Schoology Learning Podcast. Thanks for joining us. This is the podcast where we talk about some things we're hearing out in the world about education, as well as some tips and tricks about our favorite platform, which is, of course, Schoology. My name is Kellie, and I'm joined by my colleague, Ericka Waterman.
Hey, Kelly. I'm so excited for us to take this time. I just remember how fun it was when I was teaching to take the lunchtime or, any little break that we had and just kind of talk with colleagues. So hopefully everyone can join us and just get a little chit chat about education and Schoology while they're at it.
Yeah, so let's get started. Okay, Ericka, how's it going?
It's going well. How are you, Kelly?
I am doing well. Had a very nice, relaxing weekend, one where I got to do some reading for fun, along with, just my usual trying to keep up with all the things. So,
I'm so glad to hear you say that because I definitely try to weave in the reading for fun because I find that a lot of time I think in the roles that you and I have, we read a lot that's for professional learning, right? That we just constantly want to get better and be more knowledgeable about education. So we could turn this into a fun little book talk on our fun reading. But did you read anything, from an educational standpoint that we should bring out today?
well, it's funny. I find myself for professional reading doing much more of articles and snippets. And I think part of it's because I'm trying to keep up with what's happening with AI. And there's a lot happening in education right now anyway. And
So true.
yeah, so I mean, I have been following a couple of folks that on LinkedIn. I actually find that really helpful as a resource. And I follow folks not just that are US based, but kind of across the world, because it's always interesting to see what's happening, like in Australia, for example, with what they're doing with AI.
Mhm.
Or we've got different people in higher ed that have a totally different take on it. And so anyway, so I got to read some of those things. One of the things that I was sort of wading through was there was this whole conversation around a World Bank study about a tutoring project, and I'm oversimplifying, in Nigeria, and kind of how that impacted the students. And there was just all this conversation around how do you really measure and draw a line between a tool like AI and whether or not kids actually are doing better. Was the sample size accurate? Was this the right kind of methodology? It was just really interesting. And I don't have a research background, but I still was, sort of intrigued by how do we try to figure out what's working? Because it's changing so quickly, and that's one of our challenges. So, but it was, yeah.
Well, first, let me say thank you because I kind of think of you as like my AI and education expert because I feel like you have been staying as much in the know as anybody that I'm aware of on kind of where the trends are and what's going on. So thank you for all that extra reading you're doing that I get to, use. I appreciate it.
Well,
But you're right. There is a, how much impact will this make? How can it, how can we determine that? But I think you and I have talked about like our PowerBuddy for learning in Schoology and all the ways we know that even maybe like it's helping streamline things for teachers. We do have our PowerBuddy for learning for students. That again, we know that this is going to be beneficial. It's just a matter of like how much and what's the best way and all that kind of good stuff that we're going to have to figure out along the way.
yeah. So I know that we have talked about PowerBuddy for learning in the past we've hinted, and we talked about it recently on, well, both, I think the PD podcast we just did and the one that's for spring cleaning. And it's just always, as I mentioned, there's things changing all the time, also changing all the time on our own platforms. So,
Yes. So today we brought in a special guest. So Melissa Scholten is here. She's the director of product management, and she runs the team that has been doing all the PowerBuddy work. And so we're really excited to have her on and talk to us about PowerBuddy for learning, because that team has done some major, amazing things within Schoology. And it's been fun to talk about, but even more fun to have you here to talk about it with us.
Thanks so much. I'm excited to be here.
So I think, Mel, to get started, because we always try to give people like, hey, if you didn't realize like this was added to Schoology, or you can now do this, or don't forget, you can use this little piece of Schoology. So I always like to, give our listeners something that they can go, away from this podcast, and go to Schoology and kind of try it out. Is there something that your team has done over the last, maybe 3 months recently that people want to point out that's kind of your favorite thing, or something that you're really liking about what PowerBuddy is capable of in Schoology?
Yeah, that's a great question. So within the tools, I think just the additional tools that we've been able to add, as well as making it easier to get to them from the homepage in Schoology. Some of those tools, there's a few things like the lesson hook, to help make things engaging for students, and the student choice board. Those are probably two of my favorite new tools. But the small improvement of having the examples, to be able to click on those and get the inputs automatically filled in, I feel like is one of those small changes that has really helped people use the tools and figure out how to get
I'm
what they
so
want.
glad you said that. Yes. Like those examples, I thought they were just going to be these like, okay, cool. They're there. They help me demo. They help me like show people what PowerBuddy is capable of, which I kind of thought was the reason. Like we were just making it easy for us. What I did not realize is how much users who are unfamiliar with AI and prompting and those examples kind of springboard it. They make people like, oh, that's what it can do. This is so amazing. So yeah, I agree with you that those examples are a game changer.
Yeah, I can actually kind of chime in too about a real life example. We did an AI literacy workshop in the LA area, invited a bunch of different districts to come in, and it really wasn't about platforms at all. It was really just about AI literacy concepts, but we did give everybody a login to Schoology, an environment where they could just use a fake user. And we had PowerBuddy turned on, so they were able to experiment as a teacher and then also as a student. And one thing that came out of the conversation was that a lot of folks associate having to learn how to prompt as part of AI literacy. And I'm not saying you shouldn't understand the basics around prompting, but the fact that we give so much good guidance, it was interesting to see people try something and then see the light go on, like, oh, I see, like this part is where it needs to have better context, and also those examples then quickly like, oh, I could just tweak this and change it. So I agree with you, Ericka. Like that was, it does make it easier to demo, but it's amazing how it's accelerating people's ability to actually use these tools and not be hampered by a perceived lack of understanding about how to write the prompt to get the good answer. So
Yeah, that's a great point. I think the examples show that you just need the details, but the actual prompt itself of what you're trying to get, we've done a lot of that heavy lifting for our educators to save them time.
Yeah. And your two favorite that you mentioned, Mel, the lesson hook and the student choice boards, like those are what I have gravitated towards as well. Cause I think those were the parts that I always felt weakest at as a teacher, of trying to, hook in that lesson and make it something that my students like. Kelly, do you have a favorite tool? Is there something that you really like?
Yeah, well, it's funny that that Mel brought up the choice board, because before that tool existed, one thing I was showing people is how to use the academic content prompt but you had to put in a lot of detail. And so having it already kind of built, ready to go, was awesome. But actually my favorite one, the one that I always like want to play with, is the one that has the music lyrics. I just think that's really fun. I think it's because we used to make up songs for like prepositions and like, I sometimes will just go in and just have it do one for me just for the theme, just
for the fun of
just
it.
for
I
fun.
love it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Great to hear.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
So Mel, I'm sure people are constantly like, okay, so you made it do this. That's awesome. But now we want this. Because I think that's something in product that, maybe people understand, maybe they don't, is that we deliver something and people are so excited. And then they ask like, okay, but can it do this now? And you're like, but I just made it do that. But there's always new things that people want. So how do you guys decide like, this is what we're going to do next with this really cool tool we already have?
Yeah, that's a really good question. A lot of listening, a lot of feedback. Our team is always working to hear from not even just those internal customer facing folks that are hearing directly from our customers, but we're trying to always reach out with power ups, and we have surveys where we want to hear from customers and kind of get them to rank the priority of what they're looking for, so that we can take that feedback alongside of the discovery that we do. A big part of the work and product is trying to see what's out there from a technology standpoint. So with AI especially, that is evolving so rapidly that our team really has to, stay focused on how it's progressing and waiting for when the right time is to innovate on some of these technologies for our roadmap. So for example, with generating content like media and images, there was a while that we didn't feel like it was consistent enough to really make the roadmap. So waiting for the technology to get into a place where we feel comfortable with it is also part of that consideration for the roadmap. And so we're always listening to customers and from our sales folks as far as, reasons why, we might lose or what customers were looking for that we didn't have. And that always is how we're shaping our roadmap.
I really like that you called out that we want to make sure the technology is in a place where it needs to be really good. Like we're not just going to throw something in there because it's the hottest new thing, right? I feel like that's something I don't think we've pointed out enough, is that we do so much with intention. Everything is meant to be very well intentioned with what's out there, because it is important, especially in Schoology, where what the teachers are using and building is helping educate all of the students.
Yeah. I can tell you what we've heard a lot of with the PowerBuddy tools is people want to be able to save their prompts and what they've generated and get back to it. So that is something that we are working on our roadmap, as well as being able to favorite those tools. So Kelly can go to the lyrics and click a heart, and that will be what's at the top for her the next time she opens up her PowerBuddy tools, and making sure the tools that you love are very easy to get to.
Ooh, that's a fun little sneak peek into what's
Yeah.
coming. A lot of times we don't always get a chance to talk about what's being developed. So that's really cool, Mel. Especially when we're going to be building so many tools, right? We're just going to add to the list. Yeah.
There's so many there now that, for a teacher that's like, oh, I just want to highlight my favorite 5. I guess we'll just have to convince people, like, don't forget though, just because you favorite.
That's right. There's more.
Down. But wait, yes.
That is probably the exciting part, is just being able to constantly add new tools. We've built this in a way that's very flexible and easy to meet needs as we do hear from customers and we get feedback on an RFP. It's easy for us to push out new tools. So you're right. Don't forget, just because you favorite a tool, there's more coming. The other exciting update is for back to school, we are working on translation support. We're going to target 4 languages to start. Today, we released support for Spanish. So if your Schoology site is set to a default of Spanish and you go into the tools, you'll see now that the tool names and the descriptions are all translated, as well as the inputs. And then for back to school, we're going to be adding French, Thai, and Arabic, which I'm really excited about.
That is really exciting. Yeah, because it is, with Schoology being translated into those languages also, it's great to have that parity where it makes it, because I do think these tools are so incredibly valuable. It's wonderful to hear that those are going to be available to all of the users of Schoology and not just those that are English speaking.
Yeah, in fact, absolutely. I was just with one of our customers down in Uruguay, they've had Schoology for a long time, since pre-acquisition, and they were looking at PowerBuddy for learning, and they, really what tipped the scales for them was the availability of that to be in Spanish, not just because they needed that support for their own, students who natively speak Spanish, but they also have some English learning efforts. And so they'll be able to use that in some really interesting ways, because they could actually go back to English if they wanted to have kids practicing a little bit. So yeah, that's super exciting. Very, very
Yeah,
high.
that's a good point. The paid PowerBuddy for Learning will also have that translation support for the student chat assistant. So if your default language is Spanish, you won't have to ask PowerBuddy to converse with you in your native language. And so we'll be expanding the support for those 4 languages for the students in the chat assistant as well, which is exciting.
Yeah. So what else do you see really being important for the student side, Mel? Because I know we've talked a lot about the teacher tools because those are free, but for the paid version for the student facing assistant, besides language supports, what else are you excited about that's coming?
I am very excited for the work we've been doing to capture what students are interested in, what their preferences are, and what their passions are. We are working to integrate that into the student chat assistant. So kind of like those lesson hooks that we talked about with the tools, making learning engaging and relevant for students. This will be built into the responses that the PowerBuddy chat assistant provides as a tutor for students. So they can tie back the topic of the assignment to what the students are passionate and interested in. And I think this really is where AI becomes really effective for students, is helping it be exciting for them, innovative. They're, at home with virtual reality headsets, and we need to keep up with these kids and the technology that they are embracing every day. And so I think that part for me is exciting to see, just how we can truly personalize education by using AI in a way that makes students excited to learn again. Excited for that to come this summer for our paid PowerBuddy for Learning customers.
Well, Eric had asked me about things I'd been reading earlier today, and actually that reminded me of some research I'd read earlier this year. Actually, I don't know, for those that are listening, if you remember the original Marzano classroom instruction that works. This is way back in the day. And, they've been doing iterative editions ever since then. And the latest one that came out actually pivoted from what had been kind of well known or established for a long time, which was that the teacher in the front of the room is one of the greatest determiners of student success. And now that that research has shifted to say that the really important thing, the most important factor, is student engagement. And the more students are engaged, then the more successful they will be, because they'll have motivation to keep learning, even if they do have a brand new teacher, or there's variations obviously around teacher quality. And what if kids could still be engaged even if they were learning at home or whatever. So I feel like that's going to be really huge. I'm not sure we know how impactful that's going to be yet. I'm really excited to see that in action.
Agreed. Because I've seen little snippets of it, Mel, what you've shown me, and it's just amazing to me that we have a tool that students can use to get help on only those assignments or the materials that the teacher wants them to have help on, right? But that it keeps them focused. My favorite thing is to try and ask it other questions, and how it gently guides me back to the topic at hand.
It's gentle too. It's a very gentle
It
guide.
is very gentle. It's like, yeah, we're back over here. I just think that's so powerful. But then you add in that personalization where it's now the student really feeling like, hey, like you're understanding what would be important to me and what would make sense. And I just think that that's like, this work that you're doing is not only like the cool flashy thing of we're adding AI into Schoology, but it's actually really doing it, like I mentioned before, with intention. And it's really making sure that we're changing, we're hopefully helping to change education for the better.
Yeah, intentional is definitely the way that our team is approaching anything that we're putting in front of students, especially with AI. So that's great to hear, that, the way that we roll this out is as intentional as it is for any teacher that's going to use it in the classroom. They get to choose when it's turned on an assignment. And having those, like you said, those guardrails, not only just to help the student get back on track, but also keeping it appropriate and flagging with an email notification when there is a chat that might be concerning. Some of those less flashy aspects are really important to us to keep students safe. So that's been a huge part of how we build this. is thinking first and foremost about student safety, which is certainly, a topic that we can never talk about enough when it comes to AI and technology with students. So we are working hard to keep them at the forefront.
I'm sure the students love that also. You know what I mean? It's like one of those where you don't realize how great it is that you're being protected at the time, and you really appreciate it afterwards. I just have seen some students who chat with PowerBuddy and maybe wish that it would go off course and allow it to ask questions that are not about the assignment. I just think that, was really, like I said, really well done. And so even though the students probably don't appreciate the watchful eye, it's good that we built that in.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's important to us.
Well, I know that like as things continue to change and grow and we go in like new directions, it'll be great if we could have you back, Mel, and just kind of do a periodic check-in on what's new, what are you excited about, what are you hearing, what's the word in the street?
Yeah, I would love that. Our roadmap is iteratively changing and new solutions. So would love to join you and let you know where we are in just a few months. It's constantly changing and evolving. So I would love to come back. Thank you.
Yeah, that's the fun of, I think, this whole PowerBuddy for Learning experience and incorporating that into Schoology is, I remember showing customers something in November and then showing them the same thing in April, but them seeing the vast changes that we've made, simple things like, making the math symbols stronger and like, just those little things we made along the way that people are like, this is like a whole new tool. We're so excited to use this. So yeah, just kudos to the team and all the work they're doing.
Yep. Keep up the good work.
Thanks so much. I'll take that back to the team. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Well, thanks for joining this episode of the Schoology Learning Podcast. Hope to see you next time where we'll talk about some more topics of interest and, of course, talking about our favorite platform, Schoology.
And in the meantime, if you click on the user toolbox at the bottom of the Schoology page, there are lots of resources out there, including other episodes of this podcast to listen to until next time.
And hope to see you next time. Thanks all.